Good morning, everyone. It is Monday, and this is Kirk and Kory with your Better Than a Box Office Report movies by the numbers. Let's kick it off strong with Shazam at number 1.
In its second week, jumping right into culture, Rotten Tomatoes gave it an average rating of 88, Metacritic gave it an average rating of 80, IMDb gives it a 76, but then CinemaScore gives it an A, so that's a 96, bringing a total culture score to 85. Then jumping into critics, we have Rotten Tomatoes with a score of 73.
As well as Metacritic giving it a 71, bringing its critic score to an average of 72. Am I the only one that finds Metacritic a little metacritical? Sorry.
Bad pun.
Bad pun. That, of course, does bring us to cash, which is the thing that everyone seems to care the most about. It made $25 million this weekend, which is a net change of 53% from last week. It was in 4,306 theaters, which is 89 more than it was, making an average of $5,838 per screen it played on, and that's only in its second week. With a budget of $85 million, its gross domestically is 94. Its international is 163 with a total gross of 258. For those of you who aren't great at the quick mental math, that is a total net of $173,813,013 in 2 weeks. I don't think anyone's losing their job on this one.
Oh, no, definitely not. Jumping into the number 2 movie is Little. Going into culture, Rotten Tomatoes gave it an average rating of 86. Metacritic gave it a score of 47. Huge disparity there. IMDb gave it a score of 55, and then CinemaScore gave it a B+, which is an 89. With those huge differences, our culture score is an average of 69.25, which is really low, but it also got some high scores in there. High 80s, 40s to 50s. For its critics, Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 49.4.
And Metacritic gave it a 49. Again, this is one of those interesting times for a bit of insight here that on the culture score, on the reviews, Rotten Tomatoes gave it an 86, but the Metacritic gave it a 47. However, critics against both Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic were 49 and 49. So this is one of those times that the people of Metacritic are actually kind of agreeing with the critics across the board. Overall, that gives it a critic score of 49.2. That is a failure of critics against a 69.25, which is a D.
Not good.
Which brings us to, of course, the cash. The weekend gross was $15.499 million. No percentage change because it's the first week. It opened up to 2,667 screens, which is a little low for a big release, but it's again an average of $5,811 per screen, and that's its first weekend. It had a budget of approximately $20 million. It made $15 million domestic and $1.9 million international for a grand total of $17,400,000, meaning its net is down $2,600,000 on its first week. It didn't break even on its first week. I'm sure someone's getting a stern talking to, but as much as we're calling it a failure, it's doing genuinely okay, only coming up $2 million below the break-even point on weekend 1. And it looks adorable.
It really does.
I haven't seen it, but still.
We're definitely going to go see it. Jumping into number 3 is Hellboy, which looked really great. We still haven't seen it, but we're really looking forward to it. Jumping into culture, Rotten Tomatoes gave it an average rating of 68. Metacritic gave it a 52. IMDb gave it a 54. And a cinema score of C, so that's a 76, for a total culture rating of 62.5, which is not good, guys. Then we go into critics, who disliked it even more. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 36.2. I don't know if I've ever seen it quite that low.
So what's funny is Metacritic gave it a 31, which is 5 points lower. But then again, Rotten Tomatoes tends to be actually more forgiving, believe it or not. Metacritic seems mean. The interesting thing is I was pulling up some of these numbers this morning. I was on Metacritic, and I found both critics, not users. I don't remember his name, but the critic from the New York Times gave it a 0. And then one of the other critics, I believe from San Francisco, gave it a 100. One saying that it was total trash, and the other critic saying, "Hey, just because Del Toro didn't do it, stop being such a jerk." So the disparity on this, I haven't seen it. I don't have an opinion here other than to say I'm excited about it. But the critic score is a 33.6. Yeah. Which is failing against the culture score of 62.5, which at my high school was barely failing. Which brings us, of course, to cash. Cash, it had a budget of about $50 million, and the weekend gross was $12 million. It opened to 3,300 screens, which is about average, with an average of 3,638 per screen, which if you've been paying attention on 1 and 2 is about $2,000 lower per screen than both Shazam and Little. As I said, it's a budget of $50 million, $12 million domestic, $10 million international, total gross of $22 million for a total net of negative $27 million. Again, it's its first weekend. It's unbelievably unfair to say it didn't break even first weekend. You're fired. But
it's rough. Those numbers are rough.
In this era where you really expect to make at least 75% or 80%, like we just said with Little, which failed and came up knocking at the door, this barely made 50% of its budget, which again, how ridiculous is it that we're saying that only making half of your budget in the first weekend is a failure? But that is what we're looking at in the modern era of cinema.
Absolutely.
So that's Hellboy.
It's unfortunate because I was really looking forward to it.
I'm still going to
go
see it.
Yeah.
Pet Sematary.
Moving on to number 4 is indeed Pet Sematary, which is another remake reboot like Hellboy.
Yep.
So culture score running into it, Rotten Tomatoes gave it an average rating of 58. Metacritic agrees with another rating of 58. IMDb gives it a rating of 62, and Cinema Score gave it a C+, which is a 79, for a total average culture score of 64.25, which is, again, failing.
Right.
Critics agree. Rotten Tomatoes give it a score of 59.8. Metacritic that also agrees.
Metacritic gave it a 57. So there was a linguistic philosopher named Noam Chomsky, if I want to be all pretentious for a second, that said the most terrifying thing in all news is unanimity. If everyone agrees, something's not right. And I'm looking at this. Culture, 50. Rotten Tomatoes, 58. Metacritic, 58. Critic score, 59.8. Metacritic, 57. IMDb, 62.
Everybody's in the high 50s, low 60s.
Everyone is agreeing on this within a point. That's critics and culture. That is both people and pretentious people all giving it basically the same grade. I demand a recount. I have no intention of seeing Pet Sematary. I'm reading the reviews and they all sound about what I was expecting, but I have never in all of my time of looking at reviews seen those 4 numbers all be within 2 points of each other. It doesn't happen.
It's impressive.
It is actually impressive. But anyway, the critic overall score is a 58.4 against the culture score of a 64.25. So that's a D- and a solid F, which moves us into cash. Against a budget of $21 million, estimated the weekend gross was $10 million, which is down 59% from last weekend because it's in its second week. It is at 3,500 screens, which is about average, and it is averaging, I hope you've been paying attention to the number count, it's averaging $2,789 per screen, which is lower than Hellboy, which was lower than the first 2. The domestic is $41 million overall. The international is $35 million overall. The total gross is $820 million and $660 for a total net of $55 million, $660. So as much as we're saying this is a failure, solid C's and across the board, its overall score is a 72.9, which is a C-ish. It has made $55 million in 2 weeks. So if you're a banker, I'd call this one a solid double.
Yeah.
It's
It's not too bad, but we're probably not going to go see it.
Yeah, probably not. I wasn't going to see it if it done well, for the record.
That's true. Not a bigger fan of
the horror.
No.
But that's just me.
Moving on to wrap up movies by the numbers is Dumbo, coming in at number 5, which I'm just not thrilled with, but that's fine. Rotten Tomatoes, jumping into culture, Rotten Tomatoes gave it an average rating of 68. Metacritic gave it a score of 57. IMDb gave it a 66, and Cinema Score gave it an A-, which is it gave it a 92. So culture is an average rating of 70.75, which is decent. It's okay.
It's not bad.
Critics thought that it was a little bit less than that. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a score of 55.3.
And Metacritic gave it a 51. So again, I haven't seen Dumbo. I kind of don't plan to, but critics giving it a 55 and a 51 is about on par of what I was expecting. Yeah. The critics overall is a 53.15, which again, on the good old high school scale would be failing. This the weekend gross was 9,186,000, which is down 49% from last week in its third week. Its theater count is still in the high 3s at 3,706. Having dropped 553 screens this week with an average score of average screen score of $2,479. It's not the best. Overall,
pretty low.
It's average budget is 170. The budget was 170 million. The domestic has made total 89 million. International 177 for a total gross of 266,945,162 dollars. That nets it at a cool 96 million dollars. So as much as I think it looks like a rehashing of every film Tim Burton has made in the last 15 years,
the cash is there.
If I am a banker, I'm not displeased with my choice in backing Tim Burton.
So that is Movies by the Numbers, guys. Thank you so much. We do this every Monday because we like aggregating the information. As Kirk likes to say, if you have 2 of the 3 of the Culture's Critics cash, you can't say that it's a bad movie. Join us every weekday at noon on Kirk and Kory on Twitch. This has been Movies by the Numbers.
See you next week.